Hidden truths. The warm summer evening had given way to a cooler twilight. Martha, weary from another day at the office, stepped inside her modest home with a sense of both relief and exhaustion. She'd been working hard to provide a comfortable life for her son, Lucas, and her new husband, Ernesto. As she closed the door behind her, she let out a long sigh, shedding the weight of the day's stresses. Her first act of solace was to kick off her shoes and relish the coolness of the wooden floor beneath her tired feet. She loved the way it felt against her skin, a small comfort in a life that had become increasingly complicated. "Lucas, where are you, sweetheart?" She called out, her voice carrying a mix of warmth and concern. When no response came, her frown deepened. She made her way to the kitchen, her gaze sweeping over the tidy space. On the table, a hastily scribbled note caught her eye. It was written in Lucas's unmistakable, messy handwriting. "Mom, I'm in my room. I don't want dinner." Martha's heart skipped a beat. Lucas was never one to miss dinner, let alone write such a note. A sense of dread settled in her stomach as she hurried up the stairs, each step echoing her growing anxiety. Reaching Lucas's bedroom door, she knocked softly. "Lucas, can I come in?" When there was no answer, she added, "I'm coming in, okay?" She pushed open the door slowly. The room was dimly lit, bathed in the soft glow of a single bedside lamp. There, in the corner between the bed and the wall, curled up in a tight ball, was her son. His small form trembled, and Martha could see the red, swollen eyes peeking out from beneath his tousled hair. "Oh, honey," she said softly, kneeling beside him. "What's wrong? Why are you crying?" Lucas looked up at her, his eyes filled with a mixture of fear and defiance. "I don't want to talk about it." Martha's heart ached at the sight. "You know you can tell me anything, right? Whatever it is, we'll figure it out together." Lucas shook his head violently, tears streaming down his cheeks. "No, I can't. They'll kill me if I do." Martha froze. The gravity of his words sank in, causing a chill to run down her spine. "Who, Lucas? Who's going to hurt you?" Lucas buried his face back in his knees. "No one. Forget it." Martha's worry intensified. "Lucas, look at me," she said gently, cupping his face in her hands. "No one is going to hurt you. I'm your mom, and I'll always protect you. Please, tell me what's going on." Lucas's fear seemed to deepen. His voice was barely a whisper. "It's Ernesto." Martha felt as though she had been struck by lightning. "Ernesto? Your stepdad? What about him?" Lucas's eyes were filled with terror as he glanced away. "He hurts me when you're not here." The room seemed to spin around Martha. Ernesto, her loving husband, the man she had believed to be a good and caring person, was now accused of something unimaginable. The disbelief in her heart was palpable, but she had to remain calm for her son's sake. Martha shook her head, trying to make sense of it all. "That can't be right. Ernesto loves you." "No, he doesn't," Lucas shouted, pulling away from her. "You never believe me." "That's why I didn't want to say anything." Martha's heart sank as Lucas turned his back to her, slipping beneath the covers. She felt helpless and overwhelmed. Ernesto had been nothing but kind to her, and Lucas had always seemed to get along with him. Was it possible that she had been wrong about him? Slowly, Martha stood up, her mind racing with confusion and fear. She needed to process what she had just heard. As she left the room, she closed the door quietly behind her, hoping to maintain some semblance of normalcy. Downstairs, she poured herself a glass of water, her hands trembling. How could this be happening? She had been with Ernesto for 2 years, and in that time she thought she had come to understand him deeply. The sound of the front door opening made her jump, her pulse quickening. "Honey, I'm home." Ernesto's cheerful voice echoed through the hallway. Martha took a deep breath, trying to steady herself. She couldn't let him know anything yet. She needed to be sure of what was happening. Ernesto walked into the kitchen, his smile bright and his demeanor relaxed. He approached Martha with open arms. "How was your day, love?" he asked, leaning in to kiss her. Martha instinctively took a step back, her heart pounding in her chest. "Just tired," she forced a smile. "It was a long day." Ernesto's smile faltered slightly, but he quickly masked it with his usual charm. "I was thinking we could go out for dinner tomorrow night. How does that sound?" Martha struggled to maintain her composure. "That sounds nice. But tonight, I just want to relax." As Ernesto continued to chat about his day, Martha's mind was consumed with thoughts of Lucas's confession. She had to find out the truth, but how? How could she confront Ernesto without any concrete evidence? As she watched Ernesto move around the kitchen, making himself comfortable, Martha's resolve hardened. She needed to see for herself if Lucas's claims were true. She had to protect her son, no matter the cost. Little did she know that her plan to uncover the truth would lead her into a web of deception and danger she could never have anticipated. To be continued. A dangerous scheme. Martha lay in bed that night, staring at the ceiling. Sleep was elusive, her mind replaying the shocking revelation Lucas had shared. Ernesto's earlier cheerfulness now felt like a cruel facade, masking a darkness she had never imagined. She had to investigate, but how could she do it without raising suspicion? At breakfast the next morning, Martha forced herself to act normal. She greeted Ernesto with a smile, though her mind was preoccupied. Lucas, who had emerged from his room looking pale and withdrawn, was unusually quiet. The tension in the air was palpable, though Ernesto seemed oblivious to it. As they ate, Ernesto chatted about his plans for the weekend, his voice a blend of enthusiasm and casualness. Martha nodded along, trying to focus on his words while mentally preparing her strategy. She needed to create a situation where Ernesto's true nature would be revealed, but without alerting him to her intentions. After breakfast, Martha volunteered to run some errands. Ernesto agreed, suggesting that she take her time and enjoy a bit of relaxation. She left the house with a mix of anxiety and determination. Her first stop was the local library, where she spent hours researching behavioral cues and warning signs of abusive relationships. She also looked up resources on how to handle such delicate situations without causing unnecessary drama. While she was there, Martha received a call from her friend Julia, who had recently gone through a difficult breakup and was seeking advice on moving forward. They spoke for a while, and Martha used the conversation to practice her calm demeanor and navigate through her own swirling emotions. Julia's support was a comfort, and she promised to meet up soon to catch up properly. By early afternoon, Martha returned home, her plan starting to take shape. She needed to ensure that Ernesto was out of the house and that she could observe his behavior without being seen. She decided to use a combination of misdirection and stealth. "Ernesto," Martha began as she walked into the living room, "I'm thinking of going to the grocery store later. We're running low on supplies." "Great idea," Ernesto replied, stretching lazily on the couch. "Do you want me to come with you?" Martha shook her head. "No, it'll be quicker if I go alone. You stay here and relax. I'll be back in a couple of hours." Ernesto agreed and returned to watching his favorite TV show. Martha headed out again, but this time her destination was not the grocery store. She drove to a nearby park and spent time walking around, trying to calm her nerves and think clearly. Her thoughts were a jumble of fears and hopes, and she wrestled with the ethical dilemma of invading Ernesto's privacy. Returning home, she parked her car a block away and approached her house from the back. She had prepared a small, inconspicuous surveillance setup in the attic, hoping to catch a glimpse of what went on behind closed doors. Her plan was to hide in the attic, positioned so that she could see through a small window into the living room. Martha carefully climbed up the attic ladder, taking care not to make any noise. The attic was dusty and cluttered, filled with old boxes and forgotten items. She had cleared a small space by the window, ensuring that she had a clear view of the living room below. The minutes ticked by slowly as she waited, her heart pounding with anticipation and fear. She could hear faint noises from downstairs, Ernesto moving around, the murmur of the TV. The tension was unbearable, and Martha found herself second-guessing her decision. Was this the right thing to do? What if she was wrong about Ernesto? Just then, Martha's thoughts were interrupted by the sound of the front door opening. Ernesto had received a phone call and had left the house, but Martha had already anticipated this. She had set up a motion-activated camera near the front door to catch any unexpected visitors. As Ernesto's car disappeared down the street, Martha descended from the attic, her mind racing. She reviewed the footage from the camera and saw that Ernesto had gone to a local cafe. This was her chance. She needed to see if he was meeting anyone and what their interaction might reveal. Martha drove to the cafe, positioning herself in a spot where she could observe without being noticed. Ernesto was seated at a table near the window, engaged in conversation with a woman Martha didn't recognize. From her vantage point, Martha couldn't hear their conversation, but she observed their body language and the way Ernesto interacted with her. The woman seemed animated and friendly, while Ernesto's demeanor was more reserved but attentive. They exchanged smiles and laughter, and Martha felt a pang of jealousy mixed with her suspicion. Who was this woman, and what was Ernesto's relationship with her? As their meeting concluded, Martha followed Ernesto discreetly. He drove to a secluded part of town, stopping at a nondescript building. Martha watched from a distance as Ernesto entered the building, her anxiety mounting. What was he doing there? She waited for what felt like an eternity before Ernesto emerged, looking more serious than before. He drove back home, and Martha followed, her mind a whirlwind of questions and fears. Back at the house, she decided it was time to confront Ernesto, but she needed to be careful. She couldn't afford to act on mere suspicions. She needed concrete evidence. As she walked through the front door, her resolve was firm. She would wait for the right moment to address her concerns with Ernesto. That evening, Martha made dinner, her demeanor calm but her mind alert. Ernesto arrived home, and Martha engaged him in casual conversation. She had a feeling that something was off about their interactions, but she needed to be patient. "Ernesto, I've been thinking," Martha said as they sat down for dinner. "We should have a family meeting tomorrow. I want to discuss some things with you and Lucas. Ernesto raised an eyebrow but smiled. Sure, that sounds good. Anything in particular? Just some family matters, Martha replied, her tone nonchalant. It'll be good for us to talk things through. As they ate, Martha kept her observations sharp, but Ernesto's behavior remained consistent with his usual self. It was clear that he was hiding something, but what exactly was it? And how could she uncover the truth without causing a rift in her family? That night, Martha lay awake again, her mind racing with the possibilities and uncertainties. She had taken the first steps in uncovering the truth, but she knew there was much more to do. The path ahead was fraught with danger and deception, but she was determined to protect her son and uncover the truth about Ernesto. To be continued, the unraveling. The next morning, Martha awoke with a mix of dread and determination. She was about to embark on a delicate mission to uncover the truth about Ernesto, but she knew she had to proceed carefully. Her plan was to create an environment where Ernesto's true character could be revealed without putting herself or Lucas at risk. As she prepared breakfast, Martha kept a watchful eye on Ernesto. His demeanor seemed unchanged, cheerful, and relaxed. He chatted about the day ahead, completely unaware of the storm brewing in Martha's mind. Lucas, still subdued, joined them at the table. Martha made an effort to engage him in light conversation, hoping to gauge his mood and ensure he felt safe. Lucas, sweetheart, Martha said with a warm smile, do you want to help me with some chores today? Maybe we can tidy up the garden together. Lucas looked up, his eyes hesitant but hopeful. Okay, Mom, that sounds nice. Ernesto chimed in, I'll be out later to help with the yard work too. We can make a day of it. As the family finished breakfast, Martha felt a pang of sadness. She had hoped for a day of normalcy, but it was clear that something fundamental had shifted. She needed to create an opportunity to observe Ernesto's interactions with Lucas more closely, so she decided to make the garden project a focus. Outside, the sun was shining, casting a warm glow over the garden. Martha and Lucas worked together, planting flowers and tidying up. Ernesto joined them after a while, bringing refreshments and chatting about his plans for the week. Martha kept her conversations light, all the while observing Ernesto's behavior and interactions with Lucas. At one point, Ernesto disappeared into the house for a few minutes. Martha took this opportunity to speak privately with Lucas. Are you feeling okay, honey? You know you can talk to me about anything. Lucas nodded, though his expression was still clouded with worry. I'm okay, Mom. Just scared. Martha hugged him tightly, her heart breaking for her son. I know, sweetheart. We're going to figure this out. Just stay close to me. As the day progressed, Martha's anxiety grew. She needed to find concrete evidence of Ernesto's behavior, but she wasn't sure how to proceed. She knew that directly confronting Ernesto without proof would only escalate the situation. In the late afternoon, while Ernesto was busy in the garage, Martha decided to take a chance. She quietly entered Ernesto's study, a room he often used to handle paperwork and personal matters. She had noticed that Ernesto was always careful about locking this room, so she took a deep breath and picked the lock using a small tool she had brought from home. Inside, the room was neat and orderly, with a large desk against one wall. Martha's eyes scanned the room, searching for anything that might provide clues. She opened drawers, rifling through papers and personal items. Most of what she found were mundane documents, bills, receipts, and correspondence. However, in a locked drawer, she found a small, hidden compartment. With trembling hands, Martha opened it. Inside, there were several journals and a stack of photographs. She took out a journal and opened it, her heart racing as she began to read. The entries were filled with disturbing details, angry rants, descriptions of conflicts, and most chillingly, references to interactions with Lucas that made Martha's blood run cold. One entry in particular caught her eye. It described an encounter with Lucas that was both alarming and upsetting. Ernesto's words were laced with a disturbing blend of anger and justification, revealing a side of him that Martha had never seen before. She felt a wave of nausea as she read the final lines of the entry. I have to keep him in line. He doesn't understand yet, but he will. He needs to learn his place. Martha closed the journal with shaking hands. The evidence was damning, and her worst fears about Ernesto were coming to light. She carefully replaced the items in the hidden compartment and locked the drawer, trying to compose herself before exiting the study. Back in the garden, Ernesto was finishing up, and Martha knew she had to act quickly. She needed to address the situation with Ernesto and protect Lucas, but she also needed to tread carefully to avoid escalating the situation. That evening after dinner, Martha suggested the family sit down for a family meeting, as she had mentioned earlier. Ernesto agreed, and they gathered in the living room. Martha's mind was a whirlwind of thoughts as she prepared to confront Ernesto with the evidence she had found. Thank you both for coming, Martha began, her voice steady but soft. I wanted to have a conversation about how we're all feeling and what we can do to make our home a happier place. Ernesto raised an eyebrow, sensing that the conversation might be more serious than he anticipated. Sure, what's on your mind? Martha took a deep breath and looked at Lucas, who was sitting quietly beside her. Lucas and I have been talking, and we both feel that it's important for us to have open and honest communication about our feelings and any concerns we might have. Ernesto's gaze shifted between Martha and Lucas. I see. And what exactly are we talking about? Martha decided to approach the conversation with caution, focusing on general themes rather than directly confronting Ernesto with the journal entries. We've noticed that there are some things we can improve on, like how we interact with each other and how we handle our emotions. It's important to us that everyone feels safe and heard in this family. Ernesto's expression remained neutral, but Martha could see a flicker of unease in his eyes. I agree, we should always strive to improve as a family. Martha nodded. Good. I think it would be helpful if we all spent some time talking about our feelings and any worries we have. Open communication can make a big difference. The conversation continued with a focus on family dynamics and improving communication. Ernesto appeared to be on edge but maintained his composure. Martha felt a mix of relief and anxiety as the meeting concluded. She had planted the seeds of change, but she knew that the real challenge lay ahead. As the evening wore on, Martha found herself lying in bed, exhausted from the emotional strain of the day. Her thoughts were consumed with the evidence she had uncovered and the difficult decisions she now faced. She had to find a way to protect Lucas and ensure that Ernesto's behavior was addressed appropriately. The path forward was fraught with challenges, but Martha was determined to see it through. She would need to rely on her instincts, the evidence she had gathered, and the support of those around her to navigate this difficult situation and ensure that her family remained safe. To be continued, the unexpected revelation. Martha's determination grew stronger with each passing day, but the burden of her secret weighed heavily on her. She was now in a delicate balancing act, trying to maintain normalcy while preparing for what may come next. The family meeting had been a small victory in the sense that it had allowed Martha to express the importance of open communication, but it had also highlighted Ernesto's discomfort and the tension in their home. The following day, Martha decided to take a proactive approach. She reached out to a local family counselor, someone she had heard about through friends and who came highly recommended. She was determined to create a safe space for Lucas, and she wanted to ensure that any discussions they had were conducted under the guidance of a professional. She scheduled an appointment for later in the week, hoping that this would give her time to gather more evidence and prepare herself for the upcoming confrontation. That morning, as Martha was about to leave for her errands, Lucas came up to her with an anxious look on his face. "Mom, I need to tell you something," he said, his voice trembling slightly. Martha knelt down to his level, her heart racing. "What is it, sweetheart?" Lucas hesitated before speaking. "I saw something yesterday when you were out. I didn't want to say anything because I didn't want to make things worse, but I think you need to know." Martha's worry intensified. "What did you see, Lucas?" Lucas took a deep breath. "When you were gone, Ernesto had a visitor. A woman came to the house while you were out, and they were talking in the study. I couldn't hear what they were saying, but it didn't look like a friendly conversation." Martha's mind raced. This new information seemed to add another layer to the already complex situation. She had seen Ernesto meeting with a woman before, but the context and nature of their interaction were still unclear. She needed to find out more. "Thank you for telling me, Lucas," Martha said gently. "It's important to be honest about what we see and hear. I'll take care of this, okay?" Lucas nodded, looking relieved but still apprehensive. Martha kissed him on the forehead and left for her errands, her thoughts consumed by the new revelation. Later that afternoon, Martha visited the family counselor's office. The counselor, Dr. Elaine Carter, was a calm and empathetic woman with years of experience in dealing with family issues. Martha felt a sense of relief as she explained the situation, sharing the evidence she had gathered and the concerns she had about Ernesto. Dr. Carter listened attentively, her expression serious but supportive. "It sounds like you're dealing with a very challenging situation," she said after Martha had finished. "It's important to approach this with care, both for your son's sake and for your own. I recommend that we work together to create a safety plan and discuss strategies for confronting Ernesto." Martha nodded, feeling a mixture of gratitude and apprehension. "What should I do next?" Dr. Carter suggested that Martha continue to document any unusual behavior and maintain open communication with Lucas. She also advised Martha to prepare for a potential confrontation by outlining her concerns clearly and calmly. Dr. Carter emphasized the importance of ensuring Lucas's safety and being prepared for different outcomes. Armed with this guidance, Martha left the counselor's office feeling slightly more confident but still deeply worried about the days ahead. She returned home and found Ernesto in the garden, working on a new project. His demeanor was friendly, but Martha could sense an underlying tension. That evening, as they sat down for dinner, Martha decided to broach the subject of the family counselor. "Ernesto," she began, her voice steady, "I've been thinking that it might be helpful for us to talk to a family counselor. It could give us a chance to work on our communication and address any issues we might be facing. Ernesto looked up, a faint frown crossing his face. A counselor? Why would we need that? Martha forced a smile. I think it would be beneficial for us as a family. It's always good to have a neutral third party to help us work through any challenges. Ernesto's expression softened, but Martha noticed a flicker of unease in his eyes. If you think it would help, then I'm willing to give it a try. As dinner progressed, Martha tried to keep the conversation light, but her mind was occupied with the upcoming session with Dr. Carter and the preparations she needed to make. Ernesto seemed to accept the idea of counseling but remained distant, which only fueled Martha's concerns. After dinner, Martha excused herself and went to Lucas's room. She sat beside him on his bed, her heart aching as she saw the strain on his face. "How are you feeling, honey?" she asked softly. Lucas shrugged, trying to appear nonchalant. "I'm okay, Mom." Martha took his hand in hers. "I know things have been tough lately, and I want you to know that I'm doing everything I can to make sure you're safe. We have a counseling session scheduled, and we'll work on finding the best way to handle everything." Lucas nodded, though his expression remained troubled. "Thanks, Mom. I just hope things get better." Martha kissed him goodnight and left the room, her heart heavy with the weight of her responsibilities. She knew that the upcoming counseling session would be a critical step in unraveling the truth and ensuring that her family remains safe. The following day, Martha prepared for the counseling session with Dr. Carter. She gathered her notes, including the journal entries and any other evidence she had collected. She also made sure to keep Lucas informed about the session and reassure him that it was a step towards resolving their issues. When the day of the session arrived, Martha and Lucas arrived at Dr. Carter's office with a mixture of hope and apprehension. Dr. Carter welcomed them warmly and guided them into her office, where she had prepared a comfortable and supportive environment. The session began with introductions and a discussion of the family's background. Martha explained their current situation, carefully presenting the evidence she had gathered and outlining her concerns about Ernesto's behavior. Dr. Carter listened attentively and asked clarifying questions to ensure she understood the full scope of the situation. As the session progressed, Martha felt a sense of relief in being able to openly discuss her fears and concerns. Dr. Carter offered guidance on how to navigate the situation, emphasizing the importance of safety and clear communication. She also provided strategies for addressing Ernesto's behavior and working towards a resolution. By the end of the session, Martha felt a renewed sense of purpose. She had gained valuable insights and practical advice on how to handle the situation. The road ahead was still fraught with challenges, but she now had a clearer plan of action and the support of a professional to guide her through the process. As they left the counseling session, Martha felt a glimmer of hope. She was determined to protect Lucas and ensure that their family found a path to healing and safety. To be continued, the truth unveiled with the guidance from Dr. Carter still fresh in her mind, Martha approached the next few days with a cautious optimism. She had a plan in place, but the path to revealing the truth about Ernesto remained fraught with uncertainty. Her focus was now on creating a safe environment for Lucas and gathering more evidence to support her concerns. In the days following the counseling session, Martha kept a close watch on Ernesto's behavior. She continued to document any suspicious activities and interactions while also maintaining an outward appearance of normalcy. It was a delicate balancing act, but Martha was determined to see it through. One evening, as Martha was preparing dinner, Ernesto received a phone call. After a brief, cryptic conversation, he announced that he would be out for the evening, citing an urgent work matter. Martha's heart raced with anticipation. This was the opportunity she had been waiting for. As Ernesto left the house, Martha's mind was focused on one thing, the hidden compartment in Ernesto's study. She had to ensure that she wasn't missing anything crucial, so she decided to revisit the study and re-examine the evidence she had previously uncovered. She waited until Ernesto's car was out of sight before heading to the study. The room was eerily quiet, the only sounds being the distant hum of the air conditioner and the occasional creak of the house settling. Martha entered the study with a sense of determination, her earlier unease giving way to a focused resolve. She took out the journal and flipped through the pages, trying to find any additional information that might be significant. Her hands were steady as she scanned the entries, and her heart skipped a beat when she came across a particularly disturbing entry. Today was another difficult day. Lucas is becoming more defiant. I had to remind him who's in charge. It's clear he doesn't respect me yet, but he will learn. I have to make sure he understands the consequences of disobedience. Martha's stomach churned as she read the entry. The nature of Ernesto's control over Lucas was more disturbing than she had initially thought. She carefully placed the journal back in its compartment and closed the drawer, ensuring everything was in its original state. As Martha left the study, she noticed something unusual in the hallway. A small silver key was lying on the floor just outside the study door. She picked it up and examined it closely. The key was old and ornate, with intricate designs that suggested it was for something significant. Martha's mind raced with possibilities. Could it be another key to a hidden compartment or a lockbox? Deciding to investigate further, Martha looked around the house for any potential locks or compartments that the key might open. Her search led her to a small, antique chest in the attic, a chest that had always seemed out of place and had been left untouched for years. With a mixture of hope and trepidation, Martha inserted the key into the chest's lock. It turned smoothly, and she lifted the lid. Inside, she found a collection of old letters, photographs, and a few small trinkets. The letters were yellowed with age, and as Martha began to read them, she realized that they were correspondence between Ernesto and various individuals. The content of the letters was shocking. They contained detailed accounts of financial transactions and business dealings that were not mentioned in Ernesto's previous explanations. Some of the letters were from people with dubious reputations, suggesting that Ernesto had been involved in activities that went beyond what he had previously disclosed. Martha's hands shook as she read through the letters. The evidence was mounting, and it was becoming increasingly clear that Ernesto had been hiding more than just his abusive behavior. She carefully repacked the items and locked the chest, her mind reeling from the implications of what she had discovered. As Martha left the attic, she heard the front door open. Ernesto was back earlier than expected. She quickly composed herself and went downstairs to greet him, her heart pounding in her chest. "Back so soon?" she asked, forcing a casual tone. Ernesto smiled, though his expression was guarded. "I finished up sooner than I thought. Everything okay?" Martha nodded. "Yes, just getting dinner ready. Did everything go well?" Ernesto shrugged. "It was fine. Just a lot of paperwork." They continued with their evening routine, but Martha's mind was preoccupied with the new revelations. The letters and the key had added another layer of complexity to the situation, and she knew she needed to approach the matter carefully. That night, as they prepared for bed, Martha felt a pang of sadness as she saw Lucas struggling to sleep. She went to his room and sat beside him, trying to offer comfort. "Mom, are we going to be okay?" Lucas asked, his voice barely above a whisper. Martha stroked his hair and tried to sound reassuring. "Yes, sweetheart. We're going to get through this. I'm working hard to make sure everything is all right." Lucas looked at her with a mixture of trust and concern. "I just want things to be normal again." Martha's heart ached at his words. She had promised to keep Lucas safe, and she was determined to follow through on that promise. As she left his room, she knew that she had to make some difficult decisions soon. The following morning, Martha decided to approach the situation with Ernesto from a different angle. She wanted to create a sense of urgency that would push him to reveal more about his actions. She planned a family outing, a trip to a nearby park where they could talk in a relaxed environment and where she could gauge Ernesto's reactions. As they arrived at the park, Martha tried to maintain a cheerful demeanor, though her mind was focused on the task at hand. They spent some time enjoying the fresh air and playing with Lucas, but Martha's thoughts were on the conversation she planned to have with Ernesto later. After a while, they found a quiet spot to sit and relax. Martha turned to Ernesto, trying to keep her tone light. "I've been thinking about our family and how we can improve our communication. It's important that we all feel comfortable sharing our thoughts and feelings." Ernesto nodded, though he looked slightly uncomfortable. "I agree. It's good to talk things through." Martha took a deep breath and decided to use the opportunity to address the broader issues. "I've been reflecting on some of the things we've talked about in our family meetings and the counseling session. I feel that there are some underlying issues we need to address, and it's important that we do it together." Ernesto's expression grew more guarded. "What kind of issues?" Martha tried to be as diplomatic as possible. "I think there are some things we need to work on to make our home a happier place. It's not just about talking, it's about understanding each other's perspectives and making sure we all feel safe and valued." As the conversation continued, Martha carefully observed Ernesto's reactions. His discomfort was evident, but he tried to maintain a facade of agreement. Martha could tell that he was hiding something, and the tension between them was palpable. The outing ended with a mix of relief and anxiety. Martha had managed to broach the subject without directly confronting Ernesto, but the situation was far from resolved. She knew that she needed to continue gathering evidence and preparing for a potential confrontation. That night, Martha sat in her room reflecting on the day's events. She had learned more about Ernesto's evasiveness, but she still lacked the concrete evidence needed to take decisive action. She resolved to remain vigilant and to continue working with Dr. Carter to ensure that they were taking the right steps. The following days were a whirlwind of activity as Martha prepared for another counseling session. She gathered all her notes, evidence, and observations, determined to present a clear picture of the situation. She knew that the next steps would be critical in resolving the issues within their family and ensuring Lucas's safety. As the day of the next session approached, Martha felt a mixture of apprehension and hope. The journey ahead was challenging, but she was committed to uncovering the truth and protecting her family. She knew that the revelations she had uncovered were only the beginning, and the path to resolution would require courage, determination, and resilience. To be continued, the path to resolution, the days leading up to the next counseling session were filled with a blend of anxiety and anticipation for Martha. She had spent countless hours reflecting on the evidence she had gathered and preparing herself for what she hoped would be a turning point in her family's struggle. The discovery of Ernesto's letters and the mysterious key had only deepened her resolve to protect Lucas and seek the truth. On the morning of the counseling session, Martha felt a mix of nervous energy and cautious optimism. She was determined to use the information she had gathered to address the situation with Ernesto directly, but she knew that the conversation would need to be handled with great care. The safety of her family was her top priority. As she and Lucas arrived at Dr. Carter's office, Martha took a moment to gather her thoughts. She had been working closely with Dr. Carter to devise a strategy for presenting her concerns in a way that would be both effective and non-confrontational. The goal was to create an environment where Ernesto could be confronted with the evidence and encouraged to acknowledge his behavior. Dr. Carter welcomed them warmly, and the session began with a review of the progress made since their last meeting. Martha and Ernesto were seated across from Dr. Carter, and the atmosphere was tense but hopeful. "Thank you both for coming," Dr. Carter began. "Today, we're going to continue discussing the challenges your family is facing and work on finding constructive solutions. Martha has brought some additional information that she believes is important for us to review." Martha took a deep breath and began to outline her concerns, presenting the evidence she had gathered. She carefully explained the context of the letters and the key, highlighting the inconsistencies and troubling patterns she had observed. Ernesto's expression grew more guarded as Martha spoke. He glanced at the evidence but remained silent, his discomfort evident. Dr. Carter listened attentively, asking clarifying questions and guiding the conversation. "Martha," Dr. Carter said, turning to her, "can you explain how these findings have impacted your view of the situation and your concerns for your family?" Martha nodded, her voice steady but emotional. "The letters and the key have revealed a side of Ernesto that I wasn't aware of before. The behavior described in the journal entries and the financial transactions suggests that there are deeper issues at play. My primary concern is Lucas's safety and well-being." Dr. Carter turned to Ernesto. "Ernesto, how do you respond to the concerns Martha has raised and the evidence she has presented?" Ernesto's demeanor shifted from guarded to defensive. "I don't know what to say. Those letters are old and they don't reflect who I am now. I've made mistakes, but I've changed." Dr. Carter remained calm and supportive. "It's important to address any underlying issues and work towards resolution. Acknowledging past behavior is a crucial step in moving forward." Martha could see that Ernesto was struggling to maintain his composure. The session continued with a focus on understanding the impact of past behavior and finding ways to address and resolve the issues within the family. As the session progressed, Dr. Carter facilitated a discussion about the importance of accountability and transparency. Ernesto was encouraged to reflect on his actions and the need for change. Martha, though still wary, felt a glimmer of hope that this session might lead to a breakthrough. After the session, Dr. Carter offered some practical steps for moving forward. She recommended family therapy sessions to address the underlying issues and provided resources for additional support. Martha felt a renewed sense of purpose, knowing that they had taken an important step towards healing and resolution. The weeks that followed were a period of adjustment and cautious optimism. Ernesto agreed to participate in family therapy, though he remained guarded about his past actions. Martha and Lucas attended sessions with Dr. Carter, focusing on rebuilding trust and improving communication within the family. The therapy sessions were challenging but productive. Ernesto began to open up about his past behavior and the reasons behind it. He expressed remorse for his actions and a commitment to change, though Martha remained vigilant and continued to monitor the situation closely. One evening, after a particularly intense therapy session, Ernesto approached Martha with a sincere expression. "Martha, I know I've made mistakes. I'm truly sorry for the pain I've caused. I'm committed to working on myself and being a better person for you and Lucas." Martha looked into Ernesto's eyes, searching for sincerity. "I appreciate your apology, Ernesto. It's important to show through your actions that you're committed to change. We're working on rebuilding our family, and it's going to take time." Ernesto nodded. "I understand. I'm willing to do whatever it takes." Martha's heart was cautiously hopeful. She knew that rebuilding trust would be a gradual process, but she was encouraged by Ernesto's willingness to engage in therapy and make amends. Lucas, too, seemed to be adjusting to the changes. Though he remained cautious, he began to open up more in therapy and express his feelings. Martha worked hard to create a supportive and safe environment for him, and she continued to reinforce the importance of communication and trust. As the months went by, Martha observed positive changes in Ernesto's behavior. He was more attentive and respectful, and the family dynamics began to improve. The journey had been difficult, but the progress was a testament to the power of therapy and the importance of addressing underlying issues. One day, Martha and Ernesto sat down for a heart-to-heart conversation. "I want to thank you for your commitment to change," Martha said. "It's been a challenging journey, but I can see that you're making an effort. I hope we can continue to work together to build a healthier and happier family." Ernesto smiled, a sense of relief in his eyes. "I'm grateful for your support and patience. I know I have a long way to go, but I'm committed to making things right." Martha nodded, feeling a sense of accomplishment. The road to resolution had been long and arduous, but she had navigated it with determination and resilience. The family was on the path to healing, and though challenges remained, Martha felt hopeful about the future. As she looked at her son, who was smiling and playing contentedly, Martha knew that their journey was far from over. There would be ups and downs, but the commitment to change and the support they had received were key to building a stronger family foundation. In the end, Martha's unwavering dedication to protecting her family and seeking the truth had paved the way for a brighter future. The challenges they faced had tested their strength, but they had emerged with a renewed sense of hope and a commitment to creating a safe and loving home. The journey was a testament to the power of perseverance, the importance of addressing difficult issues, and the resilience of the human spirit. As Martha and her family continued to move forward, they carried with them the lessons learned and the hope for a better tomorrow. And so, as they embraced their new beginning, Martha knew that they were not just survivors of their past, but also architects of their future, a future filled with hope, healing, and the promise of a brighter, more harmonious family life.